Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Keith Kubik, and it's close enough. So working. Yep, it's green. Um, and welcome to Budget Committee meeting, first Budget Committee meeting for the school district. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I asked Tom if he would lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is the introduction of the committee. We have some new committee members. And for the purposes of us knowing a little bit about each of you and then you getting to a familiarity with the remaining people, could I ask the new people to give us a quick self-introduction? You get to go first.
I'm Murphy. My husband and I have lived here in Roseburg since 2018. We've had two daughters graduate from Roseburg High School, and my youngest is a second grader out at Melrose. And I work for the Umpqua Indian Development Corporation as the Human Resources Manager. So I lost what else to say.
Hi, I'm Nikki Messenger. My day job is city manager for the city of Roseburg. I have been in Roseburg since 1995. We have off and on raised grandkids, and 3 of them have come through the Roseburg School District to graduate from Roseburg High and 1 from Phoenix.
I am Becky Marr. I am a 2005 graduate of Roseburg High School and have 3 young daughters in the district, ages 9, 7, and 5. And by day, I have an interior design firm.
I'm Bailey Adams. I graduated from Roseburg High School in 2015. I work at Nordic Veneer as a plant manager. I think I've been on the budget committee for 2 or 3 years now, but anyhow, 3 years. Yeah, well.
I'm a new board member. What else to say? Except that's what that's what I'm doing.
I'm Ann Krimitz, and I've been a board member for 3 years, and just enjoy this process. And we're in good hands with Cheryl here.
I'm Andrea Miner. I'm completing my first year as a board member, and I have 6 grandkids in 6 years, and some of them are in the Roseburg district. And I'm thrilled to see Roseburg graduates on this committee.
Who I am. I'm Rod. Yeah, thank you. I'm Rod Cotton, board member. I'm going to spend my quick time on thanking the new board members and I think the older board members. Sorry.
What are you doing, me?
I think it's really we've upped our game to show our appreciation for you to serve on the budget committee. I think it's super, super important that you do that. Your pictures will be on the website here in a couple of days. I think the community needs to know who's representing them on this really important committee. And I look at it as hopefully your advocates for our kids. So welcome.
My name's Steve Hammerson. I'm one of the newer board members like Michael and Andrea. I have a third grader at Hillcrest Elementary. I have a freshman at Roseburg High School. And I'm not a man for words, so that's all I got.
I'm Tom Nelson. I'm a 1970 graduate of Roseburg High School. My wife is a 1971 graduate and a longtime school teacher in the district. I have 3 children that have all gone through the public school district here in Roseburg, and they live in places like Okinawa, Japan, Seattle, Washington, and Los Angeles. I am retired after 40 years in the financial services business, and I enjoy serving on this committee. In my spare times, I often, you see me at the baseball field umpiring American Legion and high school baseball. If anybody has any questions about the oddities that happened yesterday in the North Medford-Roseburg game, stick around. I'm happy to explain how that all turned out. And one of the strangest things in the 50-plus years that I've ever seen in my years of umpiring baseball.
Back to me. Thank you for being here, everyone. Again, Keith Kubik, and I'm a former school board member. I have 3 high school graduates from Roseburg High School that are all successful in public service, and one of them is a teacher. And I have been involved in public education activities for a considerable period of time, including service on the budget committee after being a board member. That's it.
Mrs. Nelson taught one of your children.
Yes.
That's why they're successful.
That's right. I think that's why my daughter's a teacher.
Hey, Keith, I wonder for the new board, the new budget members, that you know who people are, probably not. Do you know who people are?
Staff members.
I wonder if it's okay with you, just so people are aware.
Yeah, let's do the staff. Yes, please.
Hi, for being here tonight. Just echo, obviously, Keith's words. We're really, really thankful, and Ron's words, to have you here, and to be part of this process. Jared Corden, Superintendent, Roseburg Public Schools. We moved in 2019 with 3 of our 4 kids, and our daughter graduated in 2019, and then we have another graduate in 2023 and a freshman at the high school.
Michelle Nee, I'm the assistant superintendent. This is my 6th year in Roseburg. I do have one of my children is a RHS graduate. Claire graduated in 2016. Have 8 grandbabies, and some of them are students in our school district. And my husband and I are also business owners in the community.
Evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Roberts. I'm the Director of Student Services. I have 2 graduates from RHS, one an engineer and the other one a assistant for a dentist.
Tiffany Farrington. I'm an administrative assistant in the business office. I'm the one that emails you guys, and I had 3 kids go through the district.
I'm the Director of Finance and Operations for the school district, and I'm in my 16th year here.
I'm Danielle Littlefield. I am the budget and accounting manager, and I've had 2 kiddos graduate from RHS, and I have a senior this year.
I am Jill Weber. This is my 34th year working for Roseburg Schools. I'm a graduate of Roseburg High School. My husband's a graduate of Roseburg High School. We have 3 children who graduated from Roseburg High School, his parents and his grandparents, and I think we go all the way back into the 1800s. So we are here to stay. Love the community and love the work we do for our kids. We make a huge difference. What we do makes a difference for their future. So thank you for your commitment being here. I'm excited to get to work.
The next item on the agenda is selection of budget committee chair and vice chair. We do review this every year, and we just accept nominations from the group. And then the chair is the person that has the privilege of administering the meetings and keeping things in order, so they might think or say. So I accept nominations for the chair. Rod.
Thank you. I would nominate Keith Kubik to be the chair.
And I would second that motion.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Well, then we'll just vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed? Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you. Nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Tom Nelson for vice chair.
You tried. I know you tried.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any other nominations? All right, thank you. Then we'll just go forward to ask for a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Nelson for vice chair, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you very much, Chair Kubik. Appreciate it. Again, welcome everyone. In your packets, in your binder, there's a tab with budget message there. And there is a budget message from myself in there. I'm not going to read that to you tonight. But it would be probably a good thing for the group to, read and reflect on as we go through this process. I did want to talk just a little bit about a few things as it relates to budget and our financial position. First of all, I believe schools are at a bit of an inflection point right now. For those following the news media, looking at budgets across the state of Oregon, you don't have to look far. You can look to the north of us and to the south of us and see some budget issues. There's a little bit of there can be some confusion in certain places when people aren't grounded in why we have a budget. If they're not grounded in how we operate with a vision, a North Star. I'm not suggesting that people in budget crises don't have that, but I would just say how grateful I am to work in a place where the board and the district together have really worked hard to make sure we have a strategic plan focused on children. The money we receive, we need to be great stewards of. It's sacred money. And we have a responsibility to make sure we prioritize our spending based on our needs. And that has to be rooted in focusing on the needs of our children. That strategic plan that sits behind you is the framework for what you'll see in this budget that's been adopted, or not, excuse me, adopted, but presented to you tonight. Our children, it's not a cliche, are the future of our community. They should always be the center of an investment in the community. And I hope that what you'll see is this budget does reflect that expectation I have, and that I believe the board has, around the fact that we must build a budget based on the needs and expectations we have of our staff and our children. A couple of things. So you'll notice in here, there's a copy of the strategic plan, and I hope we can keep that reference. It's on the second page of my budget message. I have listed on the third page of that budget message a few of the investments we've made. You'll see this as we move through the process. I think it's important for you to kind of take a look at some of the things we're doing to enhance the experience for kids. We want kids to have a supported, joyful learning experience. It's also an expectation that we have a process where, as kids move through our school system, that they have their futures are accounted for in terms of what the possibilities are. And you'll see some of those investments there. A few things I just want to mention. These are on the last two pages here. There's been much said over the last, particularly, so if you're not aware, the state every 2 years adopts a biennial budget. And that biennial budget is, it's a process that is not unique to Oregon, but it's a really interesting process for all of us to understand. But every 2 years, based on a variety of factors, the board adopts, or excuse me, the legislature adopts a budget. And there was much made about the high investment, of state school funding. The last session a year ago, there was some politicking happening. There was some walkouts and some gridlock in Salem. And they initially passed a $9.9 billion biennium budget for education. And they came back, and Republicans came back, they actually got to 10.2. And you'll hear a lot in the media about what this historic investment is. I think legislators should be acknowledged for the investment in children. But to be really frank with you, that was about a 5% increase yearly from the last biennium budget. And what you see when you look at districts that are struggling financially, we think about the average family where things have gotten expensive. School districts are no different. We have about 800 employees. We run a business. The business is children, and everything's become a little more expensive. And so I think it's important to realize that if we look at the quality ed model, we're behind where we need to be there, but we must work within a budget. So the next biennium budget is going to be important. What's nice about this process is we know the amount of money we're going to get next year. So we're in the middle of the biennium. We actually have a really good sense of where we're going to be financially. These are more, they're more interesting discussions in the middle of the biennium. Schools have had quite a bit of funding with some of the additional funding that came from federal funding, with ESSER funding. That was COVID relief funding. And we were pretty purposeful here. That was grant funding, and grant funding runs out. And so we were pretty intentional the last few years to make sure we're spending those on the things that we need to spend them on. We anticipated that cliff of funding. We had about $20 million over the last 3 years. It came in 3 different sections of funding. Those got more restrictive each time we received money, but it was paying initially for PPE equipment. It was paying for, and still was paying for hotspots and Wi-Fi, some of the basic things to get going. We've used quite a bit of that funding, the end of that funding, on some capital projects, more of those one-time purchases. You'll see vestibules and fencing and some of that. So that's important to realize that funding must be spent. And not only that, is the jobs have to be completed, and the capital project must be completed by September 30th of 24. So that funding is not there. I really appreciated when the 3 of you came to the board meeting at Melrose. One consistent message was run a bond. And it really goes without saying that when we think about our long-term financial position, we must continue to talk about aging facilities. A bond not passing doesn't change the reality of buildings that are aging. And we do spend money that should be in a classroom supporting kids on, it's just not good money to spend, but there's not really a choice when you're finding parts on eBay for boilers from the 1950s. So I think it's worth mentioning in the budget message that although we have a balanced budget to present to you today, our potential liability with aging buildings is significant. And it's something the community we will need to reconcile in the short term and long term about what is our plan. When we have children in buildings built before World War I, that's not a good thing. And we need to, I think it's a community conversation we have to continue to have about what is the purpose what are we doing to support our children. And the impacts of not investing in children have a vast impact. I'll just mention one quick thing. In the last bond we ran, there was a woman in the community. She was almost 90. She wrote me beautiful handwritten letters. And I finally said, Evelyn, come in and visit with me. And she was upset about the bond. And she said, Mr. Corden, we don't need a bond. We need a urologist in town. And I had to remind her that the way we're going to get a urologist in town is investing in schools. And it was like that moment where she went, I'd never thought about that before. I think that's a conversation we're going to have to continue to have. I'll just end by this. You hold an important democratic responsibility to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to what we say we're going to do. The board's strategic plan is that all students will receive the care, support, and instruction they need to graduate with a plan for their most successful future. And we offer this budget to you. We're grateful you're here. this balanced budget that we believe would meet the needs of this. And we look forward to conversations that you may have or suggestions you may have on questions or suggestions going forward. So thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Any questions for the superintendent?
Thank you.
Yes.
Shelny is the next item on the agenda. I just thought I'd take a couple minutes to set up the rest of the agenda and why we are doing this in the order that we are.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I would like to ask you to do one other impromptu thing for our 3 new budget committee members on how the budget committee works and the process, just in a thumbnail.
Yes.
Please.
The budget committee is actually made up of an equal number of school board members and people from the community. So we have 7 of each. We have 3 people that are excused for tonight. We bring forth this budget, talk to everyone about it, what is in it, answer any questions that you have. And the budget committee's function is to approve the budget. You can make changes, you can suggest changes. Then after it is approved, your service is done for the year. You're stuck though for another couple of years after that. And then in June, the school board itself adopts the budget formally. So you guys will move, you'll see proposed, approved, and adopted columns. This is the prescribed format for a budget for a school district. You guys will move the budget from proposed to approved. And you will also approve our permanent tax rate.
One other question. These are public meetings, and if we have audience members attend?
Yes, we do have audience members attend. The purpose of at least one of our budget committee meetings is to accept information, give the public a chance to ask questions and take information from the public. It doesn't have to be necessarily your first meeting, but it has to be at any one of the meetings. These meetings are also recorded on Zoom. And so have we been putting those out on just like our board meetings? Yeah. So we'll put it out on our website, just like our board meetings.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was excellent.
Thank you. Scared me there for a
Now
second.
it's your turn.
Okay. A school district's budget is generally a collection of funds. A fund is a self-balancing set of accounts. It starts with general fund, which is the biggest of all the funds. It's where the bulk of the action's at. And then we have special projects funds, grant funds, those are the 200s. We have debt service funds, which are the 300s. And we have capital projects, which are the 400s. Since most of you have not had an opportunity to look over this budget document yet, we have been the last few years, we start really with those funds that sometimes, like a grant is given for a specific purpose. So there's not a lot of decision-making that can happen there, but we do want you to know what's in it. Same with our debt service. Those are for a specific purpose, kind of have to have them. And same with capital outlay. So I've asked Michelle Nee, our assistant superintendent, and she's also the director of human resources, didn't say that before, to go over some of our major grants and at least present it. And that way we can get some work done on this budget document tonight. That doesn't mean that you can't come back the next time and ask any questions that you have. And also, if you do go through this document between now and whenever our next meeting is, and you have questions, please email them to me. I can give you my email address because a lot of times it's going to be a question that everybody's going to have. And so I can research, get the answer ready, and then I can present those answers, or Danielle can present those answers at our next meeting for everybody to know what the question was and the answer.
Yes, please go.
Perfect. All right. I will be going over 4 of our major grants. We do have other grants in addition to these grants, but these are our major grants. We're going to start with our student investment account, or the SIA grant. You'll see preliminary estimates in my presentation. These are recent ones that we just got in the last day or two, so they will be reflected differently in the budget because those were the projected numbers that we had previously, and these are preliminary. These could change again because when we get our final, they often will make some adjustments to our allocation as well. So our preliminary SIA grant estimate is a little over 4.3 million. This is for the 24-25 school year. Just for some background, the Student Success Act was passed by the Oregon legislature in May of 2019. And the funds may be used for two purposes, to meet students' mental and behavioral health needs, and also to increase academic achievement and reduce academic disparities for our students with disabilities, students of color, emerging bilingual students, and our students navigating poverty, homelessness, and foster care, as well as other students that have historically experienced disparities in our schools. There are specific allowable uses of our SIA funds. They can be used to reduce class size, for a well-rounded education, for instructional time, and for health and safety. So we have to identify for each investment which categories that it falls under. We do have 4 strategies in this grant, and I'm going to go through the 4 strategies. This one I'm going a little more in depth because this is our largest grant that we have. The first strategy is to create a culture of safety and respect for all of our students and adults, and also support social, emotional, and physical well-being of our students and adults. These fall under the category of health and safety. Some of our investments are social emotional learning coordinator, which works with Dr. Weber and the teaching and learning department. We added 2 additional school psychologists. So now as a district, we have 6 school psychologists, and all of those positions are filled, which historically those have been very difficult positions for us to fill. So we have celebrated that we are fully staffed with our school psychologists. In addition, we have skills trainers in each of our elementary and middle schools, and these are to help with student behavior and support students in the classroom. Our second strategy is to ensure that our instructional materials and tasks are appropriately supportive and challenging for all of our students, and also are aligned with content area standards and culturally and academically relevant. This falls under the category of well-rounded education. Our investments are our elementary STEAM teachers, materials for our STEAM teachers. Just to give you a quick explanation of our STEAM teachers, they travel around to all of our elementary schools and provide science instruction aligned to the NGSS standards for all of our elementary students. They have their van, they drive around. The students are very excited to have them there, but they are serving a great need of providing science and technology and engineering and art lessons for our students. If you ever have an opportunity to be at a school when the STEAM team is there, it's a very exciting endeavor. So I highly suggest it. In addition, we have been purchasing books for our classroom library, so students have access to more books in the classroom. The third strategy is to establish systems and interventions to identify and remove barriers to graduation for all of our students. This falls under class size and well-rounded education. We have a lot of investments and activities in this category. We've added additional special education teachers, special education instructional assistants. We now have a full-time music teacher in all of our elementary schools. We added additional elementary teachers to reduce class sizes, additional middle school teachers to reduce class sizes. We have middle school TOSAs to support our principals as being instructional leaders in the building. We added a high school health and wellness teacher, as well as in this next year, we will be covering and providing for our RVS teachers. So that's our virtual school staff, will be in the SIA grant for next year. Yes. You absolutely can. Teacher on special assignment. So there's quite a few things that can fall under that umbrella. You will see TOSAs for our middle school as well as our elementary school. We also have TOSAs in our special education department. So these are licensed teachers that are providing support for the district. In our elementary schools, our TOSAs, which we will have full-time TOSAs in all of our elementary schools next year, they help support behavior, they help support teachers, and they are also there so our principals can go to trainings and help lead the work of being instructional leaders, but then leave someone at the building who can assist and be, cover things while they are out. They can attend meetings for the principal. It's an extra support for our students and teachers in the building. We have them at the middle schools as well. And then we have them in our special education department to support behavior, support teachers, cover IEPs. They do a plethora of things for the school district.
And we're talking about it.
For the TOSAs? Oh, the whole grant program? Cheryl can probably tell you exactly where it is better than me.
I think it would be helpful.
Yes. Appreciate it.
I think it's on 289.
I was going to direct you to 287 and the corresponding pages, and specifically 251 for the student investment account budget. Page 251.
251. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. The last strategy for SIA is to ensure educators and families have the tools to support academic success for every student. This falls under instructional time and well-rounded education. Some of the investments for this is the early formative reading assessment that it's for our elementary schools. We also have before and after school programs, electives, and extracurricular activities, and to offset student fees. So SIA has allowed us to eliminate fees for our students to participate in sports and extracurricular activities as well as electives. This has been reduced a barrier for our students to participate. And this is our third year that we've been able to do that. And next year our fourth year that we've been able to reduce those fees for our students. Any questions on the SIA grant? Okay, I'm going to talk about a new grant that we have, the early literacy grant. The preliminary grant estimate for next year is a little over $457,000. Oh, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Poured over all these pages and knows all
I-
this. This is our first look.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a new one?
This is a new grant, yes.
And I'm just going to give you a heads up. Some grants are all alone and separate if they have their own fund number or their own grant number, and some are combined within. We have a federal funds fund and we have a state funds fund. And this one would be included with our non-federal grants or Fund 250, our state grants, and you'll find that on 225.
Thank you. So in 2023, so just recently, the Oregon legislature established early literacy as a top priority. They passed the Early Literacy Success Initiative, which has 4 goals, and to increase early literacy for children from birth to 3rd grade, reduce literacy academic disparities for student groups that have historically experienced academic disparities, increase support to parents and guardians to enable them to be partners in the development of their children's literacy skills and knowledge, as well as increase access to early literacy learning through support that is research aligned, culturally responsive, student-centered, and family-centered. The investments that the school district is putting money into from the early literacy grant We currently have one district literacy coach that serves our elementary schools. Next year, we will have 2 district literacy coaches to support literacy in our elementary schools. We will have a home-based summer reading. So this is backpacks with books and also information for parents on things they can do to support their children over the summer. And some classes for our parents on how to utilize those materials for with their children over the summer. Professional learning for ELA professional learning for our kindergarten through 5th grade teachers. We will be purchasing phonics and literacy materials. And we are also having an intensive elementary literacy summer school this year that will be held in ELA, English Language Arts. I have to remember all of our acronyms that we have. English Language Arts, Professional Learning. Our elementary literacy summer school this year, this is a new program that we are able to offer with a focus on literacy. It will take place in 4 of our elementary schools. Students are invited to participate based on their reading needs, and transportation is provided along with food, lunch, breakfast and lunch for our students while they are there. And it will run from July 1st until August 1st this summer. Any questions?
How's been,
How's
the participation been in those types of summer?
So
have they met expectations?
Yes. Last year we didn't have as many programs to offer. We just had Winchester Elementary last year. The previous year when we had funding from the state for summer learning, we did have it at 4 schools again. And we had about 500 elementary students that participated. So we tend to have good participation because we provide transportation for all of the students that come. We don't have the same boundaries with where you are living. We do provide it for all of the students who are participating in summer learning, as well as breakfast and lunch and activities for the kids.
Am I understanding that it's invitation based?
Yes, it is
on
invitation
reading levels?
based on reading levels.
Okay.
Yes.
And then what are the hours for that? I'm just thinking for parents that are.
It's 8:15 to 12:15.
Okay.
Do you know which schools you're going to be at?
Yes. So it will be Melrose, Fullerton 4, Green, and then we also have summer learning at Winchester this summer. And then ESY is for our special education students, and that will be at Fir Grove. And then we do have summer learning at RHS as well for credit retrieval and supporting our 9th grade students coming in, as well as ESY for extended school year for our special education students. So we have a busy summer coming.
Our library will probably be in contact. They're always looking for opportunities to get books in hands of kids. So
perfect.
They follow the Lunchbox Express. Yes. So this might be another opportunity.
Yes.
Question too. Say it's invitation only. What happens if we have a child who isn't invited and they want to come?
So we're starting with invitation only to see where we get with our number of students. And then if there is still room after we have put out the invitations, then we could open it up to more students.
So has it been invitation only when we had 4 schools?
No, it has not. It's invitation only now because of the parameters of this grant. We have to keep it specific to students who are struggling in reading and need additional support. So that the grant requires that.
So I'm getting cloudy here. So then they can't come if there was room. If you have a student who, I'm not trying to make this difficult for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is specifically targeted for students who need the additional, thank you, Bailey, who need the additional support to catch up for reading. And we're looking at the interventions and the programs and the data of that child to ensure that we're targeting the instruction for that student. So if a student is a very proficient reader, this program won't meet their needs because our goal is to see that we have some students who are behind and we want them to start the next year caught up. In the past, our summer learning was fun and engaging, and an opportunity to keep kids as part of school after COVID. This grant and this program is different because we're trying to catch kids up. So if we offer it to everyone, it's going to be difficult for students to have a small group and target in for the needs of the kids that we're trying to close that gap for.
Okay. I don't agree, but it's just my opinion, because we have been told that during the summer, even those best readers lose.
And I agree. And that's why we are adding the backpack program in to keep kids reading and engaged during that time, and offering that connection with parents to be that side-by-side coach during that time. Okay. So that's the second part that we're working on. I wish we could, well.
So I just need to know if we have a parent. So realistically, they can't. This is for invitation only, so no matter if we have 100 spots, they are not.
The difference is Winchester, because Winchester is funded under a different grant. They are funded under SSA, which falls under, that's the Student Success Act, so connected to SIA. Winchester is a different grant. The other three schools are this grant, so they fall. Winchester is open to any student that attends Winchester because of the funding for the grant.
I didn't want to make it difficult.
No, it's not.
But just for
it's a good
purposes,
question.
we want the seats full.
Yeah.
So to clarify, if there are open spots, we'll look to find a way to open that. Yeah. I think for the group too, it's really, I mean, this is a moral imperative with literacy. It's part of democracy. But it's, when kids are behind in reading, school is hard. And as you move through the grade levels, you're really not reading to learn, you're learning to read. And it's, when we look at our literacy data right now, this is to your point, we're trying to find ways so we don't get the typical, where they end in June, we get back there about November. We want to make sure we try to bridge that gap for all, but we do have kids that have to, they need some intensive intervention with fluency, accuracy, phonemic awareness. They don't know multisyllabic words. So it's really about taking a look at where they need support to provide that for them to move forward.
And Michelle, this is just K through 3.
So this first iteration of the grant can be K5. The next iteration of the grant, so we have it, this is through next year, and then the next biennium of the grant has to be K3. So they opened it up at the beginning for K5, and then it'll be narrowed in future years. So for this summer, it's for our current kindergarten through 4th graders right now will be invited to attend the summer learning.
Who creates that invitation list? Is it teachers that provide that?
Yes. So so teaching and learning department, we have our assessments that we do for our students. So DIBELS, iReady. So we look at all of the data and we work with the schools to identify those students that fall into those areas.
We have pretty good information on each kid in terms of kind of where they're at, and that's not just their academic level, it's also their growth level. So are they trending toward the right direction? Remember, a lot of our kids, you know, you're consistently behind. If I'm behind as a reader a year and a half, and I'm getting a year's worth of growth out of a year's worth of school, it's not enough. I'm going to so the idea is to both flatten to catch up on the growth target as well as the specific the activity based on, you want this to be about a love of reading, but also it's based a little more on the science of reading about what kids need in terms of, like, say, the specifics around phonics, fluency, accuracy, those components are very important.
And just to follow up with, so all of our grants that we receive have very specific parameters that we have to utilize when we are determining what we spend it on. We're definitely given a box that we have to stay in. And that's why I wanted to give you the explanation at the beginning of the grant, like this is what the purpose of the grant is. And I have to send in quarterly reports on every one of these grants to show where we are spending the money. It has to be approved through ODE. We have to turn in yearly reports. I mean, there's process we have to go through with turning in everything that we do to make sure that it falls under those expectations and parameters.
Can I mention this one quick thing? There's a business of managing a grant, there's data and things. That's the back end, but just so the group knows, the front end is a very invitational opportunity about, we're so excited we have this. It isn't about like your kid's behind, you need to get here. That's not how we're approaching it. And so just so you know, even though you're like, wow, this sounds like it's kind of intense, that's the back end work. Is we do have reporting and data to work on and managing the grant, but the front end is really invitational. It's about, we're so excited to have your daughter here, and she's doing so many great things. We need to find a way to work together to kind of make sure that we get her here or him there. And so hopefully the mechanics of the grant isn't what will be our forward facing.
No,
just
it's
important
not.
to realize that.
It's, yeah. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, as a parent of a daughter on an IEP and who is going to participate in the system, and like having volunteered in the classroom, I mean, you can just tell, like, I guess I would just say, it's so exciting, by the way. I'm so grateful and excited that they had it this last year. They didn't. She couldn't do anything. And she got so behind these good learning matters, it didn't really put a dent in it, like going to school every day. And I can see, the kids who are strong readers, yeah, they're rusty at the beginning of the school year, but it's kind of like riding a bike. And they jump on and they take off very quickly. And you can see the drop off. I think with kids who are already a year behind or a year and a half behind, it's not like jumping on a bike and taking off. They struggle really hard. And like you said, that I know my daughter just sits there and look at a page and be too frustrated to participate. So there is a big difference. Like I said, that drop off happens for everybody, of course, but the kids who are already way behind, it's like it's not like picking it up with like a lot of the kids who are on the I'm so excited to have this, and I get really passionate about it because it's hard. I never struggled with what my daughter does, so it's very new for me and hard to understand, but awesome.
All right. Okay. On to high school success, measure 98. You can see there that our preliminary grant estimate, and I will turn to Cheryl and Danielle as far as what page.
Yes, 271.
Perfect. We'll have this down by the end. Our preliminary grant estimate is approximately 1.5 million for the 24-25 school year. This also is a state grant. The High School Success is a fund that was initiated by ballot measure 98 in November 2016. So sometimes you will hear it called High School Success, and sometimes it's referred to as measure 98, but it is the same grant. The intent of, and I have of high, I just obviously did not proofread that. The intent of the High School Success is to improve student progress toward graduation beginning in grade 9, increase the graduation rates of high schools, and improve high school graduates' readiness for college and career. And the funding is provided to establish or expand programs in 3 specific areas: dropout prevention, career and technical education, and college level education opportunities. These are some of our investments, our major investments in the High School Success, using the High School Success Grant funds. We have 9th and 10th grade smaller learning communities. This includes teachers, so 4.5 teachers plus planning and professional learning time. Dr. Weber, I'm going to turn over to you for just a minute to explain smaller learning communities, please.
You find the transition from 8th grade. Thanks, Bailey, for taking care of it. We find the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade is difficult for students, and when we see that drop off academically, and they need to have that connection. And so a wellness, an English, and a science teacher have the same group of 90 kids or so, and they move within that group. Those 3 teachers monitor students. They watch, make sure their assignments are turned in. They make sure they attend They look at their grades, and if things start falling off, they gather together to support that child. So that movement keeps another set of eyes on them as they move to that next level. My last year of teaching, I was part of a smaller learning community, and I want to say it was the best year of teaching, working with those amazing teachers, and for us to have that for the kids. Bailey probably was part of a smaller learning community in ninth grade. It was powerful, and you remember it.
Is that a question or a statement?
Okay. No, you weren't with them because it was during.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Weber. In addition, we have 2 high school graduation coaches, and they work with every one of the students in the building to help keep them on track for graduation. They check in with them, help them with their planning, and moving forward in their choices as they graduate from high school. We have the summer transition and credit recovery courses for high school students.
Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
How does the high school graduation coaches differ from just their counselors?
Their counselors.
Mm-hmm.
Great question.
The counselors are their academic counselors. So the students will meet with their counselors. Every student meets with their counselor every year, and they have a 4-year academic goal. They can go to them if there's some problems with their grades or that they're having a friend problem. The graduation coaches have a specific cohort of students that receive support on top of what their counselors do. So they may be students who they're not on track for graduation. They have failed 4 courses, and we can see that they're struggling. They get a little extra care on top of so a counselor may have a caseload of 300 students, where the graduation coaches may have a caseload of 40 students. And so it's that more individualized, like, you're not here today. Where are you? Get here. You need to be in school. Or you're going to stay after school with me so we can work on these assignments, or during lunch. Or they also offer a success class, which is, we're going to mom you a little bit. So we're going to keep you on track and be, making sure everything's taken care of. So just more specific and specified through support. Okay.
And Becky, I'll just add too that, when you look at our current graduation rate, it's we're measured on a 4-year graduation rate. But there are situations in our community where people need more than 4 years at times. And I don't know why we seem to give adults more grace than kids sometimes. It's an interesting conundrum sometimes. But last year we had a 92% graduation rate with our 5-year. And so those graduation coaches are also focusing pretty intensely on, sometimes the counselors are focusing a lot on that 4-year piece as well. And so are the grad coaches, but we don't want to forget kids that have challenges or are just failing forward. They didn't, calculus wasn't their thing or whatever. And so it's important for us to make sure it's every kid. And so the grad coaches are also helping, making sure we don't forget those kids that might need 4th year and a semester, or 4th year and 2 semesters. And so it's one of the focuses as well.
Yeah. Those graduation coaches, are they teachers also?
Yes.
Okay,
they're licensed teachers.
Okay, but no, do they have they have classrooms?
No.
Besides, are they strictly, that's their duty to be a coach?
So two out of their 6 periods.
Oh, okay.
So they have 4 periods in a prep. So
okay.
The grant also supports our dual credit courses. These are our college credit courses and our AP courses. It also pays for 2 additional high school counselors for a total of 5 that we have at the high school. In addition to that, we also have our career and college and career counselor as well. So a total of 6, if you really total them together. A high school automotive teacher is paid out of the high school success grant. And then we also purchase CTE equipment and supplies for auto, health occupations, agriculture, business, manufacturing, and drafting. We purchased a lot of the equipment and supplies needed for our CTE classes. And then this past year and moving into next year, we have a split position with UCC, with Umpqua Community College, for our P20 Pathways Coordinator. That's Brett Steinecker, and he works in conjunction with UCC to work on building our pathways, which right now it is, we are working on our advanced manufacturing as well as the nursing pathway for our students to leave and move on to OHSU and leave that program as a registered nurse.
I'll mention one thing just because it's kind of cool. So advanced healthcare has been a big focus, and Brett's done a great job on working with the college, and Rachel's done a great job at the college, and our board's done a great job of making sure we feel a responsibility to make sure kids see a pathway in our community for a job here. A lot of our youth are like, I'm getting out of here. There's not a spot for me. And we want to change the calculus on that, where kids can stay and see a pathway. So advanced manufacturing is a big one, and that's not just geared toward timber, but it definitely is geared toward timber. You haven't been to a mill recently. Everyone's on a keyboard. That's the way. Hey, Haley, tell us about mills. I mean, we need people who know how to problem solve. The mechatronics program, it funnels right into there. And then another cool thing, in case you didn't know, like within the advanced healthcare, next year at the high school, we have the LPN program. The kids, the only students in the state of Oregon and the nation that I'm aware of who can enroll at Oregon Health Science University will be at Roseburg High School next year. Our LPN kiddos will be enrolled at the high school and doubly dual enrolled at UCC and OHSU. They'll leave our school when they graduate, have seats automatically for the nursing program. And about a year and a semester, and they'll have their RN, being associates. The college, UCC, OHSU will come down and finish the bachelor's degree here at UCC's campus. Students will have a guaranteed job in the community. And also we have an earn to learn program we've worked out with them. And so it's pretty exciting. And we see that as one of our architectural pieces. Our next board meeting will be with our board and UCC's board together. And so it's not just partnership integration that we're working on, that kids have a pathway to a job in our community. Without debt. And that's the big piece. Kids, you can go off and it's fine if you want to go off, but we can, the majority of our kids that enroll this year will have a job that pays, $80,000 a year with no student debt. And they'll have a job in our community. And we want to see this is important, I think, to the board, it's important to our community. That's what we're building with the support of this grant. So exciting.
Just real quick, I was wondering if you could touch on a measure that includes grant money, like the nature of it. Like, is there an expiration, or how does it change if it's going to change? Like, how do we anticipate that this grant money will continue?
Yeah. I'm fine to talk about that. So some grants come with, so like the early literacy grant is a 2-year grant. So what we have to do is we have to think about, so we have 2 literacy coaches right now. So we have to think about the back end of that grant. We have to think about the expiration of that grant in 2 years, so we're not sitting at a cliff. So they have expectations of what the quarterly reports need to look like, and we have our own work on that piece. So some come with an expiration date. Some are legislatively approved. So both Measure 98 and the SIA grant come as legislative action. So the CAT tax, I'll call the CAT tax, is where the SIA funding comes in, corporate activities tax. So those, we kind of read the tea leaves around what the economy looks like, what the legislative composition looks like at the legislature, and also kind of what the business and kind of what business looks like. And those are all pretty green light right now on those, but they can expire without legislative action. So we feel pretty confident about Measure 98, about SIA. We're 5 years into SIA. I don't see that shifting. Both R's and D's have been supportive of that so far. If we got into another 2008, we probably would need to hold our breath on what that looks like. And then the other grants, like early literacy, comes with an expiration date on it.
Early literacy is legislatively approved.
Yeah, but I think it was 2 years.
It'll roll.
Oh, very good.
Again. So,
okay,
yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Question. The autopsy bed or whatever it's called.
Automatage.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The
$100,000.
Yes.
$100,000 or whatever it is. Type.
Yeah.
Did that
It
come
wasn't
out of
that.
this came out of,
Yeah,
well, by the time you throw everything in? Yeah.
that was a portion of Measure 98 and also SIA. So both grants have came.
So had we not had this Measure 98, we probably would not been able to. UCC has one, and it's important for us with the growing healthcare stuff.
Yes. So
I have volunteered to be a live body, but they haven't taken me up on it.
So the automatage table it's an autopsy table, but it is all electronic and virtual. So our students are able to conduct an autopsy, but it's all virtually. So we don't have to have cadavers or those type of things. Virtual cadaver. Yeah, it's a virtual cadaver. So it's pretty fascinating if you want to come watch something.
Just came last week.
Yeah, we just got it.
Important to realize, to Rod's point, the reason that we purchased that is because of the dual credit. We need to offer dual credit in anatomy and physiology that lines up with the credit at the high school. So it's important for that to happen for accreditation. But yes, these funds were how we bought that $72,000 table. It's a lot of like, what?
Yes. Absolutely.
Michelle, just
Yes.
one,
Mhm.
so this Measure 98 then, that's 2 high school coaches or graduation coaches, 2 high school counselors, and you said also a career.
So it's the
college and career.
We don't pay for the college and career out of this grant. That's just another position that we have at the high school. We do pay for, if you look, it's 5.5 teachers at the high school, actually 6 if we throw in the other one. So we are adding additional teachers there and our automotive teacher as well.
And this does expire?
No, this is
doesn't?
legislatively,
Okay.
I mean, it could if the legislature decides in the future that the state doesn't have the funds to support it. It has been in place since 2016. Okay. So it's been pretty stable since that point.
Probably the safest grant we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. And SIA, as Superintendent Corden said, is from the corporate activities tax. So that is a tax that any of our businesses in the state who their sales are over $1 million, you have to pay a portion into the corporate activity tax. I just had to pay this for my business. So it's interesting. I get to see both ends because I see the advantages because I manage this $4.5 million grant that comes from the CAT tax. And now as a business owner in the community, we have to pay the CAT tax, but it feels a little bit better paying it when I know where it's going to. So it's definitely been nice to see it from both sides. And I just paid that on Monday, so I do know exactly what it is. There's one more grant that I wanted to share with you. And Title I is a federal grant. So I'm going to explain this to you because there's a lot of pieces and parts to this. But go ahead.
Page 191.
Our preliminary Title I grant for 24-25, this just came out yesterday, is a little over $2 million. The purpose of Title I Part A is to provide all children an opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education. This is part of the federal Every Student Succeeds Act that it used to be called No Child Left Behind, but they changed that name and changed the standards and pieces and parts of it. But so now it's the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it provides financial assistance to districts and schools who serve a larger population of children experiencing poverty. By providing additional resources, the program is intended to ensure that all students have access to academically enriching curriculum and meet the state's challenging academic standards. So the other grants that I shared with you are state grants, and this is a federal grant. Title I funds can only be used to support students at identified Title I schools. Schools are identified as Title I schools based on the percentage of students of poverty enrolled in that school. These are our current Title I-A schools in our school district. The way you are identified as a Title I-A school is based on the percentage of students of poverty in your school, identified by those who qualify for free and reduced lunch. It used to be through free and reduced lunch applications, and families would have to fill them out at the school. This has changed now. Now it comes through SNAP benefits. So the families who qualify for SNAP benefits are the ones that are identified as qualifying for schools or people of poverty or under the poverty rates to qualify as a Title I student. So Fir Grove Elementary, 94.5% of the students at Fir Grove are students of poverty. So that's what those percentages are for you. So 6 of our 8 elementary schools are designated as Title I schools, and both of our middle schools are designated as Title I schools.
What is the percentage that qualifies? Is it
40? It's 40% is usually the threshold for qualifying.
That trend been increasing over the last 5 years?
Yes. Fir Grove 3-4 years ago was at 75%, and now they're at almost 95%. So it's definitely been increasing.
What are the levels that determine poverty?
What percentage or the
No,
levels?
The levels, what?
So it's income level.
But what is that income?
Based on the size of the family.
Okay.
So the federal government has a matrix basically depending on, the size of the family and the annual income.
So can you give us an example? So family of 3, I mean, just an approximate or.
That's something we can.
Okay, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, we could definitely share it with you next time. Because it changes. I know it's the families that qualify for SNAP benefits, and I know those percentages and numbers change over time as well. Yeah. 2.2. Cheryl, do you know why?
Yeah, and this revenue piece will also include anything that we have as a carryover from the current year.
Carryover. Yeah. No, you're fine. So, we are allowed to carry over a percentage of the grant each year. So thank you, Daniel. And the grants run until September 30 for the year. So there's some overlap that happens between 2 budget years. And our Title I-A grant investments, it pays for our elementary and middle school learning specialists. So our 6 Title I elementary schools have a full-time learning specialist, and both of our middle schools have a learning specialist, and the learning specialist is there to support literacy. They can support math as well, but these are for our students who need interventions and additional assistance with reading. And they also support the teachers in the school with professional learning around research-based literacy resources. It also pays for instructional assistants in each of our elementary schools that support our learning specialists. We have elementary teachers on special assignment. I spelled it out for you on this one, so our TOSAs. This coming school year, we will have full-time TOSAs in all of our elementary schools. 6 of them are paid, all of them actually are paid with a portion of Title I and Title II funds. Only if you are paid with Title I funds, you can only work in a school that is designated as a Title I school. So we do have 2 TOSAs that'll be at Hillcrest and Melrose, but they are funded with different funds because we can't utilize Title I funds to pay for anything at Hillcrest and Melrose because they're not designated title schools. We also have the pre-K classroom at Green Elementary School. So Title I pays for the teacher and assistant in that program. Our homeless liaison that supports our homeless families. It also pays for parent and family involvement at all 8 of our Title I schools. Lots of staff professional learning, purchasing technology, and next year will also be a portion of Title 1A will be used to pay for a teaching and learning coordinator. Any questions? I know I just threw a lot of information at you.
I had a question.
Yeah.
What parent family involvement? What does that look like?
So the Title I comes with specific parameters about what parent involvement can look like in the schools. And so it's STEAM nights, math nights, reading nights. So where families can come and learn and share in activities with their students and then have something to take home that they can continue to utilize at home to support their students as well. So it's around science, math, and reading typically.
Have we done that in the past?
Yes, we've been doing, it's been a requirement of Title I for a very long time. Yep.
So I'm sure it varies
Mm-hmm.
with all of these programs we've discussed, but how is the staffing for these programs? Are we understaffed, fully staffed?
Oh, as far as the positions being filled?
Yes.
We are fully staffed.
Okay.
Yes.
I think as you go through the budget too, one thing to keep in mind with the Title I funds is the law specific that you can do supplementary work, you can supplement, but you can't supplant. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you can't say, hey, we've got this title money, so let's just pay for this and kind of flip out. It has to be an addition to what it is for everyone. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what happens is you look through the budget and as you think, particularly if you have kids in school, like, I wonder why this school has these things, but maybe my school doesn't. And that oftentimes is that you can't supplant with this money. It's intended to make sure it supplements the program for kids. So keep that in mind as you go through this title grant. If you have questions, it may answer that question around the supplanting versus supplementing. Yeah.
And after you have reviewed the budget document, and if you have any questions, I'm available and happy to answer them. I can answer them next meeting, or you're always welcome to email me as well.
Is it ever a grant application based on the district as a whole being a Title I, or does it break down by school in every scenario?
If we, as a district, when you get your title funding, we determine which school we have to apply and send all of those things to the state. Mm-hmm. A whole district can be title, but we would need all of our schools to move to at least 40%. So, Melrose right now is sitting around 20%. Hillcrest is in the high 30%. So it's getting close to being there. So it probably won't be long and we'll get there. But it's based on the percentage of students of poverty.
But all the schools would have to be.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes what that means, Becky, is what it can mean that it's you may not get the money, but it might be the distribution may be among more schools and kids. So
right, we would get the same amount of funds, but we would have to distribute it between more schools.
There is, it does. I think it's worth mentioning that currently Melrose and Hillcrest are in some ways there are still kids of poverty there. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways, we have to think about the law of Title I, but in some ways they're in some ways kind of doing they're kind of getting a semi-disservice because in some ways they count as a total overall population of poverty. It's distributed among other schools. But we can't use those funds in those buildings. So we have to think a little bit about that supplanting, what I was saying about the supplanting and supplementing. And so in some ways, non-title schools, the students of poverty are, it's a tricky one, right? Because in some ways they're they can get lost, let's put it that way. Because the school doesn't qualify, even though the kid would qualify for services. So it's something that's continually on our mind.
How does that work for free and reduced lunches? Like I know Melrose, all students get that, but they're not Title I. So how does that break down?
Yeah.
Sorry, is this something I should be emailing you?
Oh,
Because
no.
I can do that.
You are fine. No, but we might expand on the conversation when we discuss the Nutrition Services Fund.
Okay.
But the district currently serves free meals to all students under what they call this Community Eligibility Provision, or the CEP. And that just means that we serve all students for free, and we get reimbursed from the federal and state governments based on how many free, how many reduced, and how many are qualify for paid. And that happens from, again, the SNAP benefits and Medicaid eligibility. Melrose is in a little different, they're in CEP provision 2, which means they need to establish a base year, unlike the other schools. And so we did collect free and reduced lunch applications this year from that. And now we will not need to in future years.
Your questions are important.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
My question is, these poverty numbers alarm me. Some of that due to private schools and home schools where you're taking the income levels that are typically higher for those families that can afford to send their students to those schools. And obviously then that drops, or that increases the number of poverty students as compared to the total enrollment, and raises our percentages.
It's been a wondering of ours all year, but we do not have a disproportionate amount of students not of poverty leaving the district. The overall, so if we look at like who's going to a private school, who's homeschooling, it is the same percentage of students we have.
But are those higher income?
No.
Oh, they're not.
So it's very interesting. In fact, some of the kids we're most worried about that leave us are kids of poverty, because they tend to bounce from one program to another program to another program. So that is interesting. The overall amount of students or families experience poverty in the community has really increased. And that's we've looked at the amount of students who have left to homeschool, private school, charter school, online school, and we don't have it's almost equal to what our current percentage is. And so we really can't attribute. It was a wondering of ours over the last couple of years, like, are numbers going up because we're losing kids whose families aren't experiencing poverty? And the answer is no. The numbers of poverty are just going up in the community.
Does that stay true from COVID to now? Or what is your scope?
The scope was the time I've been here in 5 years, which was the COVID year.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, COVID clearly had an impact on us. That was where we had kind of a lot of things happening around, schools and feelings about everything from masks to politics, to all sorts of things. So really we tracked this pretty close in the last 5 years, but the year, my experience in here is since 2019. And there's insufficient data. I've reached out to several superintendents on this, and most people haven't tracked the delta of who's left and has that had an impact. We've looked pretty closely at ours. In fact, we look at that monthly, and we can't attribute the numbers of poverty increasing to students leaving whose families aren't experiencing poverty. It's just a higher number of families who are qualifying. Now, some of the federal numbers have shifted, and oftentimes that kind of depends on who's in office at the federal level. But they've been, I think, a little more gracious about SNAP benefits, given the size of the family, because of inflation. And so part of this is that it's easier to qualify for benefits in an inflationary time if the number they have for qualification increases. And so that probably is our largest. I think we have families experiencing, not finding high wage jobs, not keeping up. And we know that's the case, certainly. But the amount of people qualifying for SNAP benefits, we're not part of that. That's a federal thing. More people are qualifying. So it's those two things.
So real quick, so those districts that have lower poverty levels, have they been more successful in passing bond levies? That's an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my experience, I lived in Sherwood 15 years and worked in Beaverton. And although there were, there were 34 elementary schools in Beaverton, and there were elementary schools of 99% poverty, but there were elementary schools of 2% poverty.
Okay.
But what we tend to see is tend to see more poverty in rural areas.
Sure.
And in rural areas, it's been difficult to pass bonds. And so I think there's a correlation between, which makes sense, just economically, people saying, I don't know if I can do this. But you tend to see that maybe an equal distribution around the age. You take a look at two things. If you look at the average age of a community, the passing of a bond, unless there's kind of old money there, like a Lake Oswego comes to mind, that's been tricky. As the age creeps up, a lot of people just say like, I don't have kids in school, right? And then the other piece is where you see the birth rate and death rate flipped is where bonds don't often pass. So when the death rate is far exceeding the birth rate in a community, there's a good chance you won't pass a bond. In an area where the birth rate is higher than the death rate, bonds pass. And so our community is the opposite right now, where the death rate's higher than the birth rate. And so that probably is the number one factor in, but I think the number two could be around poverty, but it's actually more of a death rate, birth rate as we look at that across the state.
So I have a similar scope question, because it seems like, and my percentages could be off, it seems like 80% of the elementary schools qualify, 50% of the middle schools qualify, and obviously Roseburg High isn't. You've been here 5 years. Has there been any kind of drastic change in the percentage of so many elementary schools, half of the middle schools and not the high school? I'm just thinking, like, if you have young kids, you're probably younger, you're probably making less money. It probably seems like, how much your family income is when you're raising kids in elementary school versus raising kids in high school over time, I would think is going to change. So I wonder if the impact or the amount, the percentage has varied a lot, because to me, it would be an indicator that younger families are going to make less money, older families are going to make more. That's probably just going to be a steady thing that doesn't change. Have you seen any drastic up or down with the elementary school or the middle schools?
We see, so both middle schools qualify here. It is less common that a high school qualifies in the state of Oregon,
right? Because
it takes in a larger area. But when you take a look at the trend we have right now, where you have, all but 2 elementaries qualifying and both middle schools qualifying, the high school is not far behind. And so if the trend were to continue, we would be 2 or 3 years away potentially for the high school qualifying. It's
they have different qualifications then?
So
to be a Title I for high school?
Not necessarily different qualifications. It has to do with the amount of funding and the amount of funding that we have. So in order to support the high school with funds, one title teacher at a high school of 1,500 students isn't going to do a lot of help at that point. So we have to look at where we can put the funds to best support the most students. So our elementary and middle schools, we can get the most out of the funding. In order, because we have the same pot of money, so we have to decide where to put them. And right now, the best place to have them is the middle school and high elementary schools, in order to get the kiddos early to help catch them up before they get up to the high school. And I know, Jill, you can share.
Well, I was going to say Title I is focused on reading and math instruction. And so knowing that if we can put that energy into those early years and get them caught up, we're more likely to have a better graduation rate. And so that's makes sense in the program, and as Michelle said, spreading that out too thin isn't gonna help.
Yeah,
any of
it's
them
not
to
gonna help
help.
anyone. And Tom, to answer your question, the federal poverty level for a family of 4 is $31,000, $31,200.
Sorry, I just want to circle back. That all makes sense. I think the confusion was we understood it to be 40%
Yeah.
of the school.
Sorry. Yes,
you
that
into
is,
that?
that's our threshold when we're looking at our elementary schools. And it's because it's such a focus on ELA and math. It's supposed to be students that are below grade level and struggling in reading and math that we can give that focused attention to. We can do that K-8 much easier than we can at the high school, because by the time they get to that, yeah.
And I was gonna say, when I'm talking about catching up, I'm talking about getting where the middle schools are at. So that 60% level where about the middle schools are at. So I think we're 50% high school.
It's 46%.
Is it 46? So we're trending toward there.
Just hoping that with our push to the CTE programs, and what we're doing to develop job opportunities, that's going to help raise the poverty level. You know, that's the only thing that is, or I mean, lower. Raise the income.
We knew what you raising.
And so we are, you know, we realize that is our biggest problem, you know, is the level of students, the amount of students that are dealing with that and coming from that household. But, you know, we want them to do better. And so, you know, that's our push for the CTE programs, to develop some great opportunities for them to change the community so that it can look different than what we're currently seeing.
Like that.
So Michelle gets to talk about grants and new grants and cool stuff for kids. This is where the action's really at. Facilities and debt service. Hang on. Hang on. I'm going to start on page 333. All right. Nice. So let's turn to the next slide already after we admire those really cool pictures. Those actually are our kids in action there in stock photos. So that's pretty cool. Fund 400. This is a capital projects fund, major maintenance. This is to separate out when the district receives a seismic rehabilitation grant, to separate it from our other maintenance projects. We've been pretty successful, thankfully, in the last 10 years with applying and receiving multiple seismic rehabilitation grants. Until recently, the maximum grant per project was 1.5 million, and the purpose was to upgrade the space to what they call life safety standards. That pretty much means that if an earthquake event, we want the building to stand long enough so when it's over, everybody can get out. Now, the maximum grant is 2.5 million, and the spaces are upgraded to both life safety and immediate occupancy. Immediate occupancy means that the space can safely be used as a community shelter after an earthquake event. So that's a good goal. It also says that they're going to focus on large spaces like gymnasiums and multi-purpose rooms for really the bulk of the grants. Next slide. Just for fun, past seismic grant funds that we've received. The awards, 2013, I won't read them all, 1.5 million for the high school gym. We've done several elementary schools. About 2020, that's when they upped the amount of the maximum. We redid the Fremont Middle School gym, Joseph Lane Middle School multipurpose room, and we were awarded in 22 and 23 grants for both Eastwood and Winchester. And the construction for those projects will take place this summer.
Can I just quickly mention, because Cheryl won't say this, these grants don't come automatically. They don't come easy, but Business Op has done a great job of continually applying for these grants. They are competitive grants, and it takes the right people who can write these and sell why our infrastructure needs to be improved more than someone else's in the state. And really, we've had there's about $15 million or so.
It's on the next slide.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it's
total.
and so kudos.
Mostly for Rod, because he always asks.
Yes, thank you.
There you go. So in the last 10, 12 years, we've received over $17.1 million in financing for seismic rehabilitation projects. We do have some pending applications out there. We have a completed application in for Sunny Slope Elementary. And also using TAP grants from ODE for the application engineering work, the next space to be assessed. I skipped over the CTE building. Next space to be assessed is the gym space at Joseph Lane. So both the Sunny Slope Elementary application and part of the CTE building, because that one could use up $2.5 million right away. We probably will end up doing a second application. They will probably only fund one at a time, so we probably won't get both of them funded, and we'll have to ask what our priority is. Next space to be assessed is the gym space at Joseph Lane. So it's really great because ODE has what they call technical assistance program grants. They're about $25,000 a piece, and they allow us to hire engineering services because of course there's quite a bit of engineering that goes into a seismic rehabilitation grant. You have to have a basic plan, what you're going to do, what you're going to strengthen. At times, the district chooses to make upgrades to the spaces that are being seismically enhanced. It's like when it makes sense and the construction crews are already there. We tend to spend up to maybe even $500,000 more than the seismic grant. And that would come from our Fund 404, which we'll discuss a little bit later tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, very much so.
Well, so that's a good clarification. Thank you, because the CTE, so the building you may be referring to is the old main that no one really uses anymore. Yeah, that's a different building. That building is not in use except for the main floor for weight lifting, because we have no other spot for that. That building the board has made the decision to shutter that building, which was a good move. The CT building is the one as you get on to exit 124 off going north that you see vocational ed, the voc ed building. It's the big darker concrete building, and that's the building that it's actively in use. But it is probably the most dangerous building that we have on campus, because it is, I mean, on all our campuses, this is my own opinion, but it is, and it's had some issues with roof and some other things, but it is effectively a building that is concrete walls that we just wouldn't want any children or people in that building in the event of an earthquake. So it does need some structural strengthening. So we're hopeful. I would be surprised if that building won't qualify for a grant. Likely could receive 2 of those, but not at the same time. So that would give us about $5 million if we do.
And one of the best things about these seismic rehabilitation grants is that often it pays for things that we would like to pay for, but we can pay for it underneath this grant. Like the CTE building does need a new roof, hands down. If we are awarded the grant, we will get that paid for with grant funds rather than our other set-asides for major maintenance. So it's a pretty nice side benefit. We were able to fund the replacement of the gym floor at Fremont, something that also has needed to be done for quite some time. But because of the seismic and what the seismic will pay for and the condition of the floor once you did the seismic work, we were able to pay for a new wood floor for that. And if you've been in the Fremont gym, it's pretty awesome looking. It's
That's cool. Good. I would just say, just kudos to Nikki. We work closely with the city and the county too, because honestly, these are community assets in the event of an emergency. These are, like Cheryl said, they're not only life safety, but they're immediate occupancy in the event of an earthquake. So probably of all the buildings we have in town, maybe the public safety building might be the other building in the event of a kind of a Cascadia type major quake. And remember, the bridges, we have some bridges getting redone in the community, but the disruption earthquake is going to be pretty profound in our area. And these will be places in the event of earthquake that the community will use. So these are great community assets as well. We do a lot of planning with the city and county on emergency response and how that will work. These would be hubs for us. And probably worth noting too, in the last few bonds, we've looked at getting generators in these spaces as well. That's been unsuccessful, but we're trying to think about the infrastructure of the city itself. But we have a number of buildings that will have that designations. That's a win for our community in the event of emergency.
The seismic grants are targeted specifically to schools and emergency services. And I know that the city's had a few of their fire stations. Have rehab, because it doesn't help to have a fire truck if you can't get it out because the building's collapsed. So on to, unless there's other questions about the seismic fund, which accounts for the funds. The next one is Capital Projects Fund, Senate Bill 1149. If you're in the Pacific Power area, you'll know that you receive a public purpose charge on your bill, and that goes to schools for energy efficiency projects. They need to be approved by the Oregon Department of Energy. We just account for them in a separate fund because we are accountable for those funds, and they ask, how much do you have left and what are you spending it on? Try to go a little bit quickly because some of these are smaller. 402 is our RHS parking lot fund. A few years ago, in order to, maybe match up our revenue with our expenditures, we used to just put the fees that we receive from students directly into the general fund, and it just got blended in with everything else we spend. However, my dream is to have another parking lot there because we don't have enough parking at the high school. We get about $17,000 a year in parking fees. It's a start. So we started putting it in the 402 fund to begin to save up to either major repairs, which we could use on that triangle parking lot, or maybe my dream someday building another parking lot there. I don't want to say out loud because what if somebody doesn't agree with me? We are not planning to purchase any of the homes in Laurelwood at this time. Okay, moving along. Yeah. Along the same lines, our 403 is a field fund, we call it. This fund was created to reserve funds and plan for the replacement of the artificial turf spaces in the district, of which we now have 2. The maximum life of an artificial turf is about 13 years, and that's really, that's the end of its life. It can cost about $700,000 to, or more, to replace. Just the turf replacement. Oh, okay. Well. Okay. So it's going to be expensive. We'll leave it at that. The softball field is new, so that's great, but we are putting funds aside for when we have to replace the artificial turf surface on the multi-purpose use field at the high school. The artificial turf was replaced 6 years ago. It's on the slide. And the revenue in this fund just comes from a transfer from the general fund. So it is coming from the general fund, but it's a savings account. So we don't have to all of a sudden spend all the money within our major maintenance 404 fund to replace that artificial turf surface. So it's really.
Importance of having that field that I think a lot of people, it allows us to have modular classrooms on what used to be the practice field. And so what are those modulars used for? A particular classroom?
Yeah, we have class every day in all 6 of those classrooms.
Okay.
The closing of the old main, we needed extra classroom space.
Okay.
I hope we sell those modulars one day.
Yeah.
It's my goal.
Yeah.
Somebody keeps saying nothing more permanent than a modular. I hate that. I want to destroy that bumper sticker.
So before you get into I really wasn't making fun of the parking, but I think it's important because I don't want to get anybody in trouble because it is a sensitive subject. We do have it. There's a parking issue with folks parking all over that shouldn't be over there parking. But I have a couple questions. Because I think it's important for everybody to know who can park in our parking lot. Seniors, just seniors and staff, or how's that? Because if we have a parking issue, maybe we need to tighten it up a little bit. I don't know.
So the way that it's set up at the high school is that it's a lottery, and seniors are first on that list. And so last names are drawn out. So different names will be in different orders depending on the lottery, and seniors go first. Then we go into juniors, again, lottery. So the alphabet changes each time, and you'll go down that list. Sometimes all seniors and juniors who want a parking spot get a parking spot. Other times we have a waiting list for some juniors. We monitor it though, because there is an agreement that if you have too many unexcused absences or that there's other grade issues and things, you lose that privilege. And every quarter that is monitored and spots are removed. And every year that waiting list gets spots. So that is as equitable of a process as we can do in the spots that are given.
Okay, well, that's good to know because we need to be good neighbors. You know, and so if we have plenty enough spots, huh?
So, here.
Yeah, because I didn't want to make it I don't want to be getting phone calls tomorrow.
We have 1,800 students at IFA. So we effectively have about 600 drivers. These are the spots good to park. Okay, so there are a few spots over here that effectively you have staff parking mostly. This is kind of a student parking area. We also have a couple of complications. They've talked about, ODOT talked about putting another thing in here eventually. So, and with the addition of steel that's over here right now, with a lot of traffic this way, we need to start to look at parking. And we've been purchasing property here for field space. As much as we don't want to lose some property here, we need to do something around parking. So we need to think about, I mean, right now we have an issue because we have ADA issues with this new field. We just can't park back there. So parking is kind of a challenge for us. We don't want to lose space, but less than 100, I think. Do you have a number on that? I think it's less than probably about 6. I would guess we have somewhere in the neighborhood of potentially 600 kids who could drive.
All I can tell you is that I've seen architectural renderings of how many spots could be put in that practice field. Now, remember, we do track in that practice field, so that's impossible right now. And it's smaller than it was when that was done, but that was 279 spots. Again, it's smaller with the modulars in there. But I did not go on record saying that we're going to build anything anywhere anytime soon.
I wasn't suggesting that.
Yeah, good. You got me off.
I wasn't suggesting that, but we will need to do more parking.
When you say 1,800, that's students and staff? Or just 1,800 students for the 4 grades?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's more.
1768 last time.
But they don't.
That's
15 something, I thought.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway.
So it's higher. It's gone up.
On that. I know I'm wrong, but I'm going to check anyway. Yeah. So what you see is you see, yes, Laura, but you also see Mountain Mike's Pizza. You see the old grocery outlet. You see, if you drive down Harvard in the morning, kids are walking. They're walking, they're parking. We also have some software. So if you're a sophomore at RHS, you won't have to stop. Yeah, and this exactly. So we have kids that are
Okay, so
please go ahead.
thank you. Our final capital projects fund is really our major maintenance fund. The others are quite a bit smaller in comparison. The main capital projects fund for the district is funded by a transfer from the general fund, which is currently about $1 million in the current year. The expenditures in this fund are all major maintenance projects, and for projects more than the annual transfer of any in any one year, the ending fund balance is used. So in other words, we're building up an ending fund balance to help us pay for some of these projects. We do routinely, when a roof really has to be done, we'll use this fund to replace that roof, or we will use that fund to as abate asbestos in a set of classrooms and redo the flooring in there. The district plans to always keep submitting fund balance in this fund to cover a major unexpected repair to a building. There are contingency funds within the general fund, but this is really, the idea is to keep money here. The transfer plus the ending fund balance, I'm actually on around page 361-ish, give or take. The district plans, again, to keep some ending fund balance. And although this major maintenance fund, $1 million, $1.5 million a year seems like a lot plus our beginning balance, it's really insufficient. We can't use it to replace a building. We can do a couple roofs, but at some point then we're going to run out of even that $1 million. So again, the district can routinely use this fund to update flooring, replace some needed heating, ventilation, and cooling. Other building needs, again, it's not sufficient to even revamp an entire school.
One question on the softball complex. Were we over budget on that? And what did it finally come out to? And how did we put the funds towards that?
Yeah.
So we actually budgeted, some of the costs were absorbed in the previous fiscal year, as the work started then. We did put $500,000 within the general fund to pay for it. And the rest was then going to come from our major maintenance fund. It is my hope that we can shift appropriation within the general fund at the end of this year and account for all those costs within the general fund, preserving that major maintenance fund ending fund balance moving forward. That would be a decision by the school board, and we will ask them that question in June. It all depends on how our other appropriation levels are functioning within the general fund. We had some positions budgeted this year that we couldn't fill, so we do have some excess appropriation or spending authority that we will use. I'm still saying I think the whole softball field is about 2.5 million, but we don't quite have all the rest of the bills coming in yet. That is my estimate.
It's about what we thought it would be, about $2.5 million for the property. We had $1 million set aside because we did two $500,000 appropriations. Is that correct?
We have been building up that ending fund balance within the major maintenance fund specific for this project.
Yeah. So it was additional $1.5 million out of our funds last year.
We're able to use that for other things besides as a multi-purpose type, such as.
Yeah, so it's if you haven't been there, there's a picture on the front of the binder. This picture is a little bit misleading because we had this ready for a softball game with a temporary fence around the kind of warning track area. But it is squared off. And so the idea there, you have kids at the high school, they're out late, and we're trying to be both good neighbors, but also have kids have a reasonable access to good fields. This field is about 48, almost 49,000 square feet of turf. The high school field is 57,000 square feet of turf. So what's nice about a softball field is there's no mound. And so you can cap all the bases and kids can run. So we'll be able to have practices there. We won't have band there. The band likes to use the measurements on the field, but you can definitely practice any sports out there. You could do, kids can, hit, soccer or whatever it is. So we want it to be a multi-use. The intent of it is to have it used so kids have access to the turf fields, particularly when the weather's not good.
It's also used for PE during the regular school day.
Yeah. Or decisions made regarding transferring funds out of the general fund and into these funds, these capital funds?
This
is a need basis.
You are right in the thick of that decision. There is, when we go over the general fund, we will present to you the transfers out, the proposed transfers out, and you as a budget committee will ponder the details of that, where it's all going, what's being spent on. You are the process.
Yeah, and just for some of those, when we think about like major maintenance issues, right? If we know we have to do a major project, whether it's a fencing or whatever it might be, or we need to do quite a bit of asphalt, and we think about something. Sometimes they're planned. So sometimes we look at like the 404 fund, which is the capital needs fund, and knowing that we have work to do. But that's what this process will. The budget committee will set us up for that.
Transfers made throughout the year.
We generally do one entry during the year there's budgeted transfers out. Sometimes we budget for transfers and don't actually make that transfer, and it's just from general fund to these other funds. We might say, well, we don't know what this other thing is going to cost us. We may need some additional funds within the general fund. Well, we don't have to make that entire transfer in that year. And the transfer is actually shown on our monthly board financial report. Okay. All right, I'm going to start on page 317, flip through some pages pretty fast because they're history only. And then we'll get to the heart of the action. It's 302, the PERS Bonded Debt Fund. It's pretty exciting. 317. The 300 fund was our general obligation bond debt. The district did have a capital improvements bond passed in the early 2000s that was paid off in December of 2021. So this fund is history only. They call it a general obligation bond because it is one that is passed by the voters, and it's outside the limitations of ballot measure 5, which was passed in 1991, and some other clarifying measures. So the district is able, and we can talk about this when we get to the general fund, the district is able to levy its permanent rate, and the voters can approve two different kinds of levies outside of that. One is a capital improvement bond, and that's what the district did, and it's been paid off. So we'll skip again 301 on page 321, full faith and credit. The district borrowed some funds to be paid by some of the energy efficiency monies, and we did projects in the 2000s. Again, this was paid off in its history only. 327. I'll try not to go too in depth on the 302 fund. It is PERS bonded debt. This fund is used to record the revenue and expenditures of the district's pension obligation bonds. Over time, the Oregon Public Employees Retirement System has identified a deficit in retiree benefits in the revenue. They don't have a specific targeted funding goal. It's about 75% is good. Even if they were 100% funded, a UAL could happen under certain circumstances. So it's really a projection. If everybody that were eligible to retire could retire, or people who have like they're 20 years in, so they're not going to retire, but they still have a benefit coming to them, that's what you're trying to fully fund. So it's an unfunded actuarial balance. The actuaries sit down, crunch a whole bunch of numbers and say, yeah, you guys aren't in a funded percentage that we'd like you to be in. So we are going to increase rates on employers. Twice now, the district, back in the early 2000s, there was an identified unfunded actuarial liability. And again, here in 2022-ish, there was another one. And the district banded together, the Roseburg School District banded together with many other school districts, about 30 of us, went and we sold bonds. We specifically sold $32 million worth of bonds, and we are estimating that we are going to pay a lower interest rate on those bonds than we would have paid in additional employer fees. So traditionally, the market, not last few years have been a little bit rocky and rough, but we sold the bonds at a percentage rate of 2.47%, which is really, really low. And now the district the market makes more than 2.47. We did have a dip in the second year, but I expect they're expecting the returns to be more like 6 to 7% currently. So on this page 327, there's a bunch of detail about the funds coming, the funds going, and when we sold them. And I'm happy it's probably a little late for an in-depth discussion of the Oregon Public Employees Retirement System. If you're really fascinated by it, I'm happy to sit down with you, phone call, whatever, and talk to you more about the in and outs of this. So this fund services the debt that we pay our bondholders. And the end result is all the other payroll lines you see in this budget are budgeted for quite a bit less than they would have been. So that's the benefit.
The number on that 2 years ago was that we saved about $4 million. So we were paying about 12 to 14%, depending on where that was at, and settled about 2.5%. So that was a good, thank you, board, to approve that sale of those bonds. It was paid off, and it was a smart move at the time.
The timing was especially good.
It was good timing. Yep.
So that's,
that it?
that is it for what I have tonight.
We'll get lots more.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
All right, next item on the agenda is a discussion of our meeting schedule. Next meeting is set for May 1st here at 6 o'clock. Does that work for everybody? May 1st.
Bring the flowers.
That a Wednesday?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. Yes. In the meantime, as you pour over the budget, make notes, write things down. One of the best things can happen, and Cheryl mentioned it, send an email in, ask a question, and I've found that the administration, the staff, shares that answer to that question with all the budget committee members, and it's a very valuable process. That information, then we can discuss at a subsequent meeting. The question may be answered just by the response. And they're almost always good questions that are beneficial to all the committee members.
I got one question. This would be towards a bond levy. You know, the state of Oregon, as we all know, hopefully, that, you know, they match dollar for dollar on a bond levy up to $4 million. Is that, so if we in the future would break up a bond levy to have, say, $20 million in one bond levy and 5 years later another $20 million, would that give us $8 million?
Not at this time. At this time, if you've received the matching funds once, you've received your allotment to allow for room because there's not enough to, you know, match everybody's bond levy.
However, Tom, it's important to realize they've increased that number in the what they call the Awesome Grant, OSCIM. The matching grant, the max, they've almost doubled the amounts. So we've qualified for almost $5.9 million the 3 times in the last couple of years we've done that. And those numbers, I think it's almost doubled. Is it 8 the max? No. Is it 8 the max now? So they've increased the number, maybe it's 50% or so. So they've realized inflationary costs make, you know, they raised that number. So it's a little bit more. The dilemma we get into is for this community is like in Oakland, you could almost go, you know, 50-50, right? Our district's a little bit bigger. So, you know, a $4 million match for a $100 million bond doesn't sound as compelling. So the number's up. I think we would qualify for more than 5.8. I think we qualified last time 5.8 and some change. Should be more than that now. So that's at least a good thing.
Yeah, to think about. Is there any other business from any member of the committee or staff? All right, then. Is there a motion to recess?
Motion to recess.
I second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you and good evening.